Hello, hello, hello. Gents, we're back. We're
We
back.
are.
Welcome to King's Inner Court. I'm your boy Best.
And I am Jeremiah.
And today,
Welcome back to Kings in the Court. Sorry, go ahead,
yeah, no
Bess.
worries, no worries, no worries, no worries, no worries. Yeah, we're both excited. We're both excited to get this topic going. Because today we're gonna be talking about leadership. So, Jeremiah, how about you tell us more? What's the topic to be about? About what we're gonna talk about when we talk about the topic of leadership.
Yeah, before we get into the topic, though, I just want to express our gratitude on behalf of Kings in the Court to all of our viewers, all of our supporters. Thank you for joining us on this journey. We
Yes.
do appreciate every single view and every single comment. So if you haven't already, hit that like button. Yes, I know you're gonna like this content already, and if
Yes,
not,
sir.
hit that like button still.
Yes, sir.
But we do want to see more comments, so
Yeah.
provide us your thoughts, your feedback, whatever the case might be. And if you have not subscribed or followed this,
Yeah.
depending on if you're watching this on YouTube or Spotify, subscribe and follow our page. We appreciate all the support. So thank you again for watching this. And yeah, today's topic, what does it mean to lead? Or what does it mean to be a leader? And your question, best, was to speak more about leadership. Is that what you said?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just maybe we can start off with just what, in our opinion, for both of us, like what
Hmm.
does leadership mean? What does leadership look like?
Yeah. So I will say that like this is something that I'm still learning in my current life, but I can point out some things that leadership is not. And leadership is not bossing people around.
Mm-hmm.
It's not telling people to do things and just expect them to do it without having an example set.
Yeah.
Leadership is not being authoritative to the point where like, hey, you must listen to me
Right.
or else. Is not threatening. So obviously there are more qualities of what does not make a leader.
Yeah.
But as for leadership qualities, I can look at some examples here. And in case you guys see me look to my side, I'm just looking at my notes real quick. But yeah, some qualities of leadership or some examples of leadership. I can think of three. Um, Number one, Jesus Christ, the ultimate leader. But I feel like that is an answer that a lot of people are probably expecting to hear.
Yeah.
So I'm also going to throw in King David and Paul for different reasons, actually. But I want to talk about their qualities.
Mm.
So, in regard to King David, he was a man that set an example. And
Mm-hmm.
what I mean by that is if you go into the biblical times, which is history, by the way, for everyone that's watching, when King David was king of Israel, Israel flourished.
Mm.
And the biggest reason why Israel flourished is because of the heart that David had for
Yeah.
God. David had no, like, for lack of better words, shame in dancing his heart out before the people
Yeah.
for God. He had no shame worshiping for God. And that's the example that he set to the people of Israel on how to be faithful. Now, of course, did he fall short? Yes, we all fall short except for Jesus Christ. But he set a great example on how to serve God. And if you go back to those times when you read the Bible, Israel really flourished during those times because they had a great example
Yeah.
to follow. So, in my opinion, some qualities of leadership is setting an example. Now, what is this example? Obviously, anything could be an example, but I think it is we will talk more about the qualities in like, in depth, but humility is a great attribute, in my opinion, of what makes someone a leader.
Mm.
Humble enough to receive feedback and humble enough to give feedback. But I do strongly believe that a great leader or a leader in general needs to have certain core
Yeah.
values
Yeah.
and yeah, certain core values and certain beliefs. Obviously, this podcast is on how man can be better, but we are using the word of God. So our beliefs is the word of God. Our core values is the word of God. Does that mean that we're perfect? Absolutely not. But we do our best to follow the example of Jesus Christ, the ultimate example. So, yeah, just speaking more on leadership qualities. Yeah, just humble and like, so the reason why I pointed out knowing your values, knowing your core values, is because not every feedback you're going to hear that is that will be applicable to you. So there might be some feedback that is not good for you, or there might be some feedback that is good for you, but at the wrong time, or not for the right mission. And I will speak about that, and I will personally speak about that in like a little bit more detail when I provide an example.
Mm-hmm.
But let me just finish the answer, the question rather. So yeah, what it means to be a great leader, or what does it mean to lead? I believe humility is one of them. Setting an example, setting an example. So that's like putting your foot forward, and not necessarily being like, hey, follow me, but just putting your foot forward and just taking those first steps. Because sometimes people just need to see other people show up with courage. So when one person shows up with courage, other people tend to follow at times. So humility, I said, send the example, and obviously is your heart posture. Like, what is the purpose of aspiring to be a leader or being a leader in that position? Is it so that you and others can grow? Is it so that you and others can achieve a certain goal or mission? So your heart posture is incredibly important. And like I said, not bossing people around,
Yeah.
not like demanding things. A leader is, to put it in simple terms, a leader is a servant where they serve others, but serving others does not mean neglecting yourself. You serve others, and as you serve others, well, I'm gonna give you my answer, and I'll give you like another answer. My answer is, as I serve others, I am serving God, and as I'm serving God, I'm also serving myself. Another answer is, as you serve others, as you are joined with this community or this group or this joint mission, everybody should gain something from it. Everybody should learn something from it. So everyone benefits. So that's my answer. But Bess, what are your thoughts? What are some attributes of leadership to you?
Yeah, those are good points. Those are good points. I think when I think of leadership, I think we're like pretty much on the same page as you, Jeremiah. I think when I think of leadership, I think of showing the way. Right, I think there's a difference between telling people the way versus telling people the way versus showing the way, and telling people what to do versus leading by example. Right, I think one thing I really like what you said is servanthood. Right, I look at, for example, the example Christ showed. Right, and I think a
Mhm.
lot of time we hear of like leadership, and I think particularly as men, like what it means to lead, even in like a relationship. Right, what does it mean to lead in a romantic relationship? Right, it's not leading is not telling people what to do. That's not leadership. That's dictatorship,
Mhm.
right? I think true leadership is leading by example, right? Servanthood, and bringing the best out of those who you're leading, right? And I think this can be applied not just in romantic relationships, but even in like a company or a business, right? Or a sports team, right?
Mhm.
Um, the best leaders bring out the best in the people around them, right?
I agree.
And I would argue if you can't bring out the best in the people around you, I would question your ability to lead, right?
Mhm.
I look at like a sports team, for example, right? Not to throw any shade at anybody, but like if you're
Yeah.
kind of talking about like this person's good and this and that is great, but everyone on the team sucks, I wonder, does that say something about this person's leadership?
Mhm.
Right? You look at like in a job, right? The company, right? Okay, this person tell everybody what to do, and people are are and it doesn't necessarily mean everybody needs to develop to be like a manager or a boss or whatnot, but developing in their goal of having that sense of ownership. The people who buy into that vision. I'm actually reading a book actually, and I think a big part of just um, leadership is, can you get your team to buy into the vision, right? I
Yeah.
think one of the things I was reading from the book, Inspired, definitely recommend it. It's the difference between having a team of mercenaries versus a team of missionaries, right? To
Mhm.
the point where it's like, can you get your team to buy? Can you sell the vision to your team? Right, not just telling people to do to do the manual day to day activity, but selling the vision, right? And like telling and like getting them to buy into that vision, right? And I look at even like romantic relationship. I think it's so important as men to have a vision, have a direction, right? Because a big part of leading, in my opinion, a big part of leading a family, right, and leading your wife, is to have that vision and having your wife, like a wife who supports and buys into that vision, right?
Hmm.
So that's what I believe is a big part of leadership, right? And look at even like with Christ, right? The commission said he said, "Go ye to the world and preach the gospel." A part of his vision, the vision of the church, should be go out to the world and preach the gospel to win souls, right?
Hmm.
That is a part of the big vision of the church, right? At least
Yeah.
it should be. It should be, right? And I think a big part of leadership is bringing out the best in people, and also selling the vision, or having the people around you buy into your main vision, right,
Hmm.
and your direction.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. What do you think?
you make some good points
Yeah,
there, like developing. So, and I want to hear your thoughts on this,
yeah.
Best. I think there is a difference between leading and being a leader, and the reason why I say that is
Explain.
because in my opinion, you can lead something without necessarily. I guess I'll phrase it differently.
Yeah,
Like in my head, I'm thinking a leader has the responsibility of developing his team or
yeah,
developing his group, right?
yeah.
Highlighting their strengths, trying to not avoid weaknesses, but either just like placing people where their strengths are and developing that. And of course, you can also develop people's weaknesses. But I guess I differentiate that being a leader versus leading, where like there's an instance where you set the example, but
Gotcha.
your goal or mission, or maybe just the scenario itself doesn't really call for developing others intentionally. And I do have some examples that will speak more on this.
Yeah,
But I just want to say that like you raise a great points that like in being a leader, it's developing the people around you. Like, is everyone growing?
yeah,
Is everyone growing? Like, are we working on our strengths and like weaknesses? Are we covering each other's weaknesses? And you aspire and inspire others to also take charge in their own endeavors,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
In their own tasks,
yeah,
their own goals, whatever the case might be. But before I have a question for you,
yeah,
Bess. But
yeah.
before I ask you that question, would you also agree and like agree or disagree about the differences between leading and being a leader?
I would say so. I would
Mm,
say so. I think there's a difference between leading and being a leader, in the sense that like some people like I think there's the act
mm-hmm.
of leading that oftentimes leader display, but just because somebody displays the act of leading doesn't always make that person a leader, right?
Yeah.
Now, they can be a leader in the moment, but I think the act of leading, let me rephrase what I'm about to say. I think the act of leading can be displayed, can be shown, can be executed by anybody, whether someone's a leader or not, a quote unquote leader or not, in the
Yeah.
team, right? The act of leading can be displayed, but that doesn't. But I would say it's not required. I mean, you don't necessarily have to be required to be a leader to exude exude the acts of leadership, essentially.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I believe. Yeah,
Okay. That's interesting.
yeah,
Do you have so actually, because we spoke briefly about like leading in the workplace, leading in like a relationship, which I would assume that you would agree that men are called to lead, at
yeah,
least within their
yeah,
families, and to be leaders among society. Now, that being said, it does not mean that a woman cannot be a leader. A perfect
yeah.
example is is it Deborah, one of the judges of Israel. I think it's Deborah. I could be
I
mistaken
believe
though.
so. Yeah,
But yeah, she was a judge of Israel. She led Israel in her own way. So like,
yeah,
we're not saying that women cannot be leaders, but God's design, which supported by the Word of God. So if you're curious or if you disagree, I strongly encourage you to read the Bible for yourself. But yeah, men are called to be leaders, especially within their families, um, and yeah, just out in society. But Yeah, so we spoke a little bit about that. Are there other examples of where one can lead? Like, let's say there's some high school students or university students. What are some examples of leadership that might be applicable to them? And maybe there's a personal experience that you want to share that's either showed when you were a good leader or maybe showed that you weren't such a great leader. And what did you learn from that?
That's a good question. That's a good question. I think one thing that I would say is, I think going back to high school, and I'll speak for somebody who is a high school. So you can even say somebody in like college too. I think one thing I would say, and I think this is the thing I like about sports, right? Like I grew up playing sports, right? Like I did basketball, track and field, you know, and I think one example of leadership is, I think it goes back to what I said, right? Where it's like getting the best out of the people in your team, right? Supporting the people. And it's funny enough because leadership, I really doesn't necessarily mean you're the best person on the team, the most talented person on the team. It can just mean that you are the one who's like somebody who can lead by example, or somebody who can provide direction, so to speak. Right. I mean, I'll give you like, I guess an example is like, even like I'll give you an example, not to toot my own horn, but when I was on my track and field, even I was in cross country. In fact, I was on my cross country team back in the day, and I think one thing I always remembered was that even though I won't say I was the best, I'm not really a long distance runner. Like I like to do long distance running, but it's not I'm more of a short distance runner, right? So like, I never really did it. I just joined the team just because like just to prove a cardio, right? And I think one thing I always remembered is I don't want to be that guy who's like, oh, my glory days in high school. I'm not trying to be that guy. but I think I'll say it's like in a situation like that, how I still try to find a way to provide direction in that team, whether it is like bringing the team together, leading the cheers, just checking in on everyone, making sure that everyone is warmed up well. Everyone's warmed up well, cool down, leading the warm ups, leading the cool downs, both the track and field and the cross country team, leading those things and providing that direction, right? Not telling people what to do, but providing that direction of how to warm up, right? How to cool down, just how to just get ready and prepared, right, for the upcoming races, right? Things like that are great examples, right? I think we even look at like, for example, like I know I keep bringing back relationship, but I think in a relationship, for example, right, it's like, okay, if you've noticed between you and your woman, your spouse, right, or your girlfriend, wife, whatever, right, if you notice like, okay, there's a communication issue, right, what can be done to kind of address it? You're not supposed to be pointing at her saying, hey, it's your fault, right? And look, I'll be honest, like I'll speak for myself. It's something I'm working on. I'm not perfect, right? But I think it's more so like discussing, having that conversation, and better understanding her view, and from there knowing, okay, what can we do to address the situation? Kind of leading those conversations, right? Leading those conversations, and not in a way of you demeaning or demanding or commanding, but more so just kind of leading those conversations and steering in the right direction. It's like I compare it to like you're a driver, right? You see the car is moving out of the lane. What are you going to do to steer it back in the right direction? Right. So, and I always say like ultimately with leadership, this is my view. With leadership, it's ultimately the responsibility of the leader. And not to say like, okay, like other people don't have a part to play. Don't get me wrong, right? Everyone has a part to play, but I think a leader, I think it's your responsibility to steer things right in the right direction. Right.
And I think a great leader also helps develop other leaders as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So just kind of so you mentioned something, you said like you're not perfect, and I just want to say that I am. No, I'm definitely not perfect. I'm far from that. But yeah, no, I do have some personal examples too. Like you mentioned the relationship one. I do have a university example that I want to just put out there. Like maybe this is something that like might resonate with somebody.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, there was so I'm gonna try to tell the stories kind of briefly, yeah. But there were two projects in my last year, right? And I'm gonna fully admit that like in these two projects, I would say that I led well.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't necessarily call myself in those two situations a good leader. And the reason for that is because now let me just kind of break down the projects, right? So one project, it was a robot motion planning project. To put it in simpler terms, we're using just some low level like AI implementing our robots to follow certain paths. And there was another project where we were creating a game. For everyone that's like familiar with Temple Run, we're doing something but underwater. Something like that, but underwater. So
Temple Run?
Yeah, something like Temple Run, but we're just basing it underwater, right? So you gotta swim in and all that instead of running. But so the reason why I'm bringing up these two examples is because during my last, I'm gonna be transparent here. Like during my last 2.5 years of my university degree, I was really just trying to crack down and just do the best I could. Like forget grades, let me just do the best that I can. And honestly, those were the best. That mentality helped me to achieve the best grades of my entire degree. But I digress. So in these two projects, because I wanted to do my very best. You know, like I wanted to do my very best, and it's a team project. So both for the robot one and both for the Temple Run underwater one, right? It's a team project. But I had noticed that my teammates, they were just kind of in it for, you know, a good enough grade. And for me, like, you're not going to affect my grade, homeboy. Like, I'm going to do the best I can. And I'm like, again, like my main focus was not achieving the best grades, quote unquote. I just wanted to do my best. But it's like, if your work is going to impact me, I'm not with that, right? So the approach I took was like, hey, listen, we got to do this. We got to do that. I was open to feedback, but I will admit that like what didn't make me a good leader at that time is like, yes, though I was open to feedback, it was kind of cut short. You know, like if what they told me didn't sound better than what I researched, which I would back it up with like textbooks and like what the internet would say, I would kind of just cut them off. Like, yeah, like I hear you. But according to like everything else, like this is just a better approach. And yes, I coordinated the teams to put in their due diligence in the work, but I did not really give them a platform to really speak out their opinions and thoughts. So yeah, I'm just kind of going to my notes here. So yeah, like I did set, you know, firm boundaries, quote unquote. I wasn't like, hey, do this, do that. But I was like, okay, let's split the work properly. How can we support one another? But just make sure that you're doing your part well. Like this is just me being real. Like, yo, make sure you do your part well, because there's no way I'm gonna be affected by you. You know, obviously I didn't say that, but I'm just like, hey, just make sure you do your part well. So yeah, there were times when they would bring up certain like feedback or just certain things that they want to try, and I'm like, yeah, but according to the textbooks or according to the internet, you know, it's better to approach it this way. So I will say that like for the robot project, we end up with a great grade. Like it was absolutely wonderful. It was really good. But looking back now, I wouldn't call myself a good leader in that position, or a good leader in that position, because I didn't really inspire them. I didn't really, you know, help them to grow. It was just more so of like, what are our roles? What are you gonna do? What am I gonna do? Here's what we need to accomplish. Let's accomplish this as a group and a team. So would I say that I led that well, quote unquote? I would say that I led it well because they achieved the desirable results, but I wouldn't have called myself a good leader in that specific example. As for the game project, where it's like Temple Run but underwater, that one I also followed a similar approach. But with this group, I had realized that they were just kind of just really there to have a good enough grade. Keep in mind, this is our last year. So people just want to graduate and just get out, right? But I was, you know, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be really honest, man. I went to my prof. I said, hey, listen, I'm putting my heart into this. here is what I worked on. So if you're gonna grade us, grade me on what I did. So looking back, like there are obviously there's more examples I can like provide in this story, but I do want to give other experiences. But yeah, looking back, I would say that we achieved the desirable results. I was firm, but not like, hey, like do this, do that. But I was more so firm, like, okay, what do we need to do? What do we need to accomplish? How should we go about this?
Yeah.
But like I said, I didn't really give them the space, the floor to really just, provide their thoughts and like help or get them to feel heard. Looking back, maybe, I mean, like, I'm gonna be honest, like the approach that we took was was a great approach, but like, did they feel heard? No. Did they feel inspired? I highly doubt this. Did they grow in that? Who's to say? Like, I'm not entirely sure. I can't speak confidently about that. So I say all that to say that in my opinion, what makes a great leader is that it takes humility to lead and to be led. I feel like in those type of group projects, anyone could be the leader, right? That's why I kind of said earlier that, like, in my opinion, I do think there's a difference or distinction between leading and being a leader. I feel like a leader is kind of like that position where leading, like, anyone can kind of take up that mantle. So like if you're in university or like in high school or in school, whatever the case might be, and you are aspiring to be a leader, or you're just one of those people that are like, hey, I want to do my best. I just want to encourage you, just be mindful of other people. Like, other people can also bring very valuable stuff to the table. And I spoke briefly about this earlier, but like the core values thing. Like, yeah, it's good to have core values, but it is also good to be a little bit malleable, because we can all learn something.
Exactly.
So yeah, the two things I learned from that experience was like, it takes humility to lead and to be led. And then sometimes you do gotta take charge, but not in a demanding way. Like sometimes the goal needs to be set. Sometimes someone needs to say, hey, we gotta accomplish this, but it's not in a demanding way. So before I move on to other examples, do you have anything you want to say about that, Best?
Yeah.
Or anything you want to say in general?
Yeah, like I think one thing, I mean, more so a question, like a follow-up question regarding that.
Yeah.
And I know you mentioned one thing about like, I can't remember what exactly you said, but essentially what I wanted to get at is like within leadership. We spoke about this. Was it I think it was the last episode or a few episodes before that? We spoke about boundaries, right? So I think one thing I want to ask, and I'm curious, is what part does setting boundaries play in leadership, in strong leadership?
That's a good question. That's a great question. I think my current answer, which can be subject to change, is, is it kind of aligns with what I was saying about like having core values, right? Or core beliefs. Like, you have your core values, you have your core beliefs. You want to be confident in yourself. You want to be confident to some extent in what you stand for, as long as what you stand for is good. And then, of course, that's subjective. But you want to be confident in yourself and who you are. So as you have your beliefs, you don't impose your beliefs or impose your boundaries upon people, but you can let it be known, like, hey, like, this is what I want to achieve, or this is what I want to do. This is what I think will help us, or this is what I think will further push us along. Now that I've brought up my thoughts, what do you guys think as well? And then there will be times when your boundaries are pushed, and I don't say that in a negative way. Like, sometimes people will, bring up insight or feedback that may push your boundaries, and I think it's just trying to find that common place where not necessarily like to make to please everyone, but how can everyone achieve some kind of satisfaction or fulfillment from this shared goal? So like, you may not, or at least like you may not be able to get like 100% of the fulfillment from that, but if you can get 80% and they can get 80%, like, that's a win, that's a W. So hopefully I answer your question, but to just kind of simplify what I mean, I do think it's important to set boundaries, but to be malleable enough where it doesn't actually compromise your beliefs, but you're also you're open to feedback. You're willing to incorporate things that could truly benefit the group. but it also takes willing people. But yeah, I want to reflect that question back to you. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree. I agree. I think a big part of it has to do with like with going back with boundaries and leadership. I think I do think it's required in leadership to be able
Hmm.
to set boundaries. Because as we discussed, right, lead boundaries isn't inherently bad,
Yeah.
right? I think I would argue that in order like boundaries setting boundaries is necessary in order to provide direction,
Hmm.
right? Because if there's no boundaries, how can you provide direction, right?
Yeah.
Where is the direction if there are no boundaries within that direction, right?
Hmm.
I think that's a big part of leadership, right? And I think not
Yeah.
just boundaries like in the team, but boundaries for yourself, right? What are certain things that you boundaries you have for yourself, right?
Hmm.
In order to be effective, to effectively lead other people, or to be led in some cases, as you said, because I think a big part of leadership is also have the humility to know when you need to be led,
Hmm.
right? And that requires a lot of humility, especially like for us men, right? I'll speak for myself sometimes. Like it can be tough, right? Because like
Yeah.
I know some guys they're naturally like to lead, right? But like they have to also know that humility to know when to be. It's okay to be like when to be led,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, to answer your question, no, I think boundaries is a big part of leadership.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you also mentioned like the relationship aspect. Like I'm gonna share mine as well
Yeah.
because like I do hope that this might encourage someone as well. But even in my last long-term relationship, there were moments when I didn't lead well and moments when like I learned from that and I end up leading that relationship well.
Mm.
And the example that I want to provide here, and just bear with me everyone, is so in this relationship that I was in, right? Um, I'm the type of person that like obviously you're gonna have quarrels, you're gonna have disputes, arguments with your partner.
Yeah.
I'm the type of person where initially, so I'm gonna say right now, like this relationship that I was in really taught me a lot about communication,
Mm.
like the just how key and how valuable communication is, which is actually another attribute of leadership. Being able to communicate, just communication, just being able to communicate.
Mm.
But yeah, in this relationship that I was in, initially my approach to arguments that we would have is that like I would sit in silence because I didn't want to say anything that I would regret, right?
Mm.
I didn't want to like, say anything that I'll be like, you know what, like later on, like, I'm sorry that I said that. I just wanted to be careful with what I said.
Mm.
So a lot of times when we would have a dispute or an argument, I would just kind of sit there in silence and not respond to her. In my mind, like I came from a good place where I was like, you know what, I don't want to say anything that would make things worse. So let me just kind of compose myself so I can say in a better way later.
Mm.
Little did I know, because like like I said, as men we're called to be leaders.
Mm.
Little did I know she was copying that same behavior.
Mm.
So when we'll get in an argument and then she'll stay silent, I'm like, yo, like speak to me. Like, why are you not saying nothing? Like, communicate with me. Like, I can't read your mind. And then she pointed out, like, hey, like you do this. And I was like, dang, you're right. Like I do that, and like it's actually not helpful for the both of us if one of us is just staying silent without saying anything. So
Mm.
what helped me, and like I said, we were just talking about receiving feedback and just incorporating that. That was one of those moments when I heard what she said. I'm like, you know what? Moving forward, I'm gonna do things differently. So what did I do differently? Anytime we had a dispute or an argument, I'll say like, hey, right now I just need to compose myself. I need
Yeah.
to like put my words together. So just give me some time.
Yeah.
And then ever since I started that approach, she also copied the same behavior, and our communication improved tenfold, like increased so much better. Does that mean that we didn't still have disputes? Of course not. We still did. Relationships are like that. It's two different people, right? But our dynamic and our communication improved by far. Just me, I noticed because she brought up, I noticed like, you know what, in this moment, I'm not actually leading her well. So
Mm.
what can I learn from that?
Mm.
And when I applied that, it's helped the relationship by far.
Mm.
But yeah, that's my own relationship experience. At least one of them.
Mm. Yeah. 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 No, I like that. I like that. I like
Yeah. So I want to ask you a question. I mean, do you have something for me, Bess? I want to ask you a question.
No. I think I had something I wanted to follow up with, but
I spoke a lot, so my fault.
yeah, no, no worries, no worries, no worries, no worries. But no, I think I like what you said. Like, obviously, it's about, like, as you said, right? Like, if we don't realize, like, I guess the power we have to how we can lead, right? Because, like,
Mm,
if we see something, right, I think it's easy to, like, say, hey, it's this person's fault, it's that person's fault, but really, a lot of times we have to kind of steer the direction a different way, right? And
yeah.
from there, that also helps, like in the relationship particularly, that also helps steer things back the right direction. So
Hmm. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
The question I want to ask you is, what's an example of leading or being a leader in the workspace, like in your
Mm.
career? I have something to say, but I want to
Yeah,
hear your
yeah,
first.
yeah. That's we were talking about this off the offline.
Yeah.
But okay, I'll start off with, like, in my opinion, like what it means to lead, like, or
Hmm.
like what it means to. Okay, wait. I think you asked what it means to lead versus be led.
Like, what does it look like to lead or to be a leader in the
Okay,
workspace?
okay, okay. Um, I think what it means. I'll start off with leading.
Hmm.
Now, again, I think there's different ways people can lead. I don't think you necessarily have to be a manager or like a manager or a director or whatever to be a leader.
Yeah.
But I think one thing I think about when it comes to leadership is not necessarily being the most knowledgeable
Hmm.
or being the most skilled. But I think, as I mentioned before, and I still stand by this, the one who can not only bring out the best in the team, right, inspire the team,
Hmm.
right, and to just, yeah, and bring out the best in the team, inspire the team, right, to have that direction, to follow that direction, right. Because I
Yeah.
think it's one thing to them to know, and like I saw like a broker, I think it's one thing to know what they should be doing. You got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do that, finish these things, right. But more so, kind of inspiring them and letting them know that what's the vision, right?
Yeah.
What is that vision? I think, yeah, I think that's one thing to me. To me, to be a good leader, in order to be led, effectively being led. Is that what your question was? To be led?
To lead or to be a leader.
Yeah, to lead or to be a leader. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think that's one situation. Obviously, like providing that sense of like inspiration, right?
Hmm.
And I think there's different ways you can do that, right? I think even if you're not necessarily a leader per se, like or not a leader, but like a director or a manager, I
Hmm.
think you can still show aspects of leader of leading a team, right? So
Yeah.
like leading people, like leading new employees, leading like interns, right? Leading somebody who you're providing, like who you're training, who you're showing what to do, right?
Hmm.
Or like even like for example, like a certain project, leading that. I think there's different ways people can lead in the workplace, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I believe. 'Cause I do find like in some cases, like I'll be honest, like I've had situations. I'll speak from my experience. I've had situations where like I like you really can you're sold by the vision, right? But there are other places where it's like you know what the tasks are, but it's more so just trying to fill a role, trying to fill
Yeah.
a certain role, and it's like you don't really feel inspired. And I think speaking for myself, it's why it's easy to feel demotivated and feel like it's just mundane and kind of and boring, right?
Hmm.
I think that's a key thing to, for example, as a leader, to check in with your team, right? See how, and again, like sometimes it's easier said than done at times, right? But knowing how's the team morale, right? I think that's a big part of leadership, right? But I think it's
Yeah.
not just about kind of doing particular tasks, right? And kind of letting them to do certain tasks, make sure they're doing that, right? Because then you're more of a boss, not a leader,
Yeah.
right? And I think it's very easy for that to take place in big bureaucracies,
Hmm.
right? Where it's like rather than kind of having that leadership and inspiration, it's more so people filling in roles, right? Also, I'm just speaking from my experience, people filling in roles and kind of fulfilling those roles, right?
Yeah.
And just try to get a paycheck, right? As opposed to like providing some sort of direction and inspiration. And direction and inspiration doesn't mean knowing what the goal, like what that's just not just like what they're supposed to do or what the goal is, like not necessarily what the goal is, but how can you inspire that within your team, right? And
Hmm.
I find it harder in big bureaucracies versus smaller ones, in my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. No, that's interesting. That's interesting for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I actually, so I, this is something that I've been thinking about
Yeah,
for some time now, mostly recently, but, and I'm going somewhere with this. So bear with me. And I also like to hear your thoughts on this best afterwards. But I do strongly believe that anyone can be a leader. And I know people are gonna be like, yeah, of course. But what I really mean by that statement
yeah,
is to find, like, if you're passionate about something or if you have an interest in something, I believe you're more than capable of being a leader in that because you're passionate about it,
yeah,
because you're interested in it.
yeah.
Now, how this applies to the workspace, I'm gonna give my own example. All right. See, I'm a software developer, right?
Mm-hmm.
I thank God.
Yeah, yeah.
However, I am not passionate about coding.
Mm,
And I'm just gonna be honest. A lot of the projects that I've worked on, they're not really my interest.
mm,
Now, could I lead? Yes. But is it working to my strength? No.
no, no.
So I find and I believe that it's much easier to lead or to be a leader in something that you're passionate about
Yeah,
or something that you're interested in.
yeah, yeah,
So, yeah. So I just more about my experience. Like, of course, now does that mean I said I'm not really passionate about coding, but I think I would say I feel more strongly about the fact that I'm not passionate about the projects that I've worked on,
mm,
because I do have ideas that that I would like to bring to life,
yeah,
and if I had a team that shared that same vision, I think that I could be a great leader in that.
mm,
Do I want to code? No.
yeah, yeah.
But I'd be more willing to do it if it was something that I was more passionate about or
Mm,
more interested in. So obviously, I know that we all understand that like life is not easy. Sometimes you got to work. A lot of times you got to work because that's what puts food on the
yeah,
table, a roof over your head.
mm,
But just for anyone that might be in the mundane life, or maybe you want to aspire to be a leader in your own career place or
mm,
workspace, I just want to hopefully encourage anyone that is listening to find something that you're passionate about, find
mm,
something that you're interested in, and work towards leading in that or work towards being
yeah,
a leader in that.
yeah,
Because like I said, like in my own current job, like I'm not necessarily motivated or encouraged to take up a leadership position
yeah,
because it's not something that I'm passionate about or something that I'm interested in. But in other aspects of my life that I am working towards to by the grace of God, there is passion there, there is interest there, and I'm willing to take those steps. And of course, once the things fall in place, I'm very willing to be a great leader or
yeah,
to lead well in that sphere
mm,
because I'm passionate about it, because I'm interested in it. So obviously I'm not saying yo go quit your job and find something that you're passionate
yeah,
about,
yeah,
but like in your day-to-day life, if there are things that you're passionate about and things that you're interested in within reason,
mm,
no evil things out here,
mm,
all right? No
yes,
evil
yes,
things.
sir,
But
yes,
within
sir,
reason, like you can be a great leader in that. No matter what it looks like. No matter what it looks like. I mean, okay, that's a lie. It does matter what it looks like.
mm,
But what I mean is like as long as it's not detrimental to anyone else. Um so yeah, so find things you're passionate about, you'd be surprised by your capability to lead. So what are your thoughts on that,
no,
Best?
I agree. I agree. I think a big part of it is, I think the reason why sometimes people have a hard time with leading is because they're in an activity or a venture or industry that they just lack or do not care about,
Mm-hmm.
right? And obviously, I understand like sometimes you gotta make a living, right? And I understand that, but I think you also think about what is the passion that God's given me? What is the passion? What are the talents? What are the skills that
Mm-hmm.
God has instilled in me? And I think a big part of stewardship a big part of resourcefulness, a big part of multiplying it is multiplying it through the act of leadership,
Yeah.
right? Because when you can lead more people, inspire more people, you inspire more people to enact that vision that God has instilled in you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a big part of, and again, something I'm learning still, right? I don't have all the answers. I'm learning it still. It's like a big part of the CEO mindset. Is I've been watching a lot of videos on this actually. Goshen. I know they spoke. I sent to you some of your line. I think they mentioned they're like they focus on like building wealth from like a godly biblical perspective.
Yeah.
Right? I think a big part.
So, sorry to interrupt you. Could you tell the viewers a little bit more about that? Like, what is Goshen's for those that don't know?
Oh yeah, so basically they're like a YouTube channel. So basically they're like a YouTube channel. Shout out to Goshen. They're
Mm-hmm.
a YouTube channel, and I actually just started listening to them, and they speak a lot of topics, but I think they more so focus on just what it means to build wealth and to be multiply wealth, but more so from a biblical point of view, a biblical
Mm-hmm.
context, right? I think a lot of times when we think of building wealth, we think of making money, greed for ourselves, right? But actually, what, what, what is the biblical meaning behind truly building wealth,
Yeah.
right? So so I've been listening to them a lot, and I think one of the things that I kind of thought was been thinking is like a big part of having the CEO mindset is essentially how can you best a big part of multiplying that passion is inspiring other people to pursue that or inspire other people to multiply that. The vision that you have, the vision that God has instilled in you, right,
Mm-hmm.
is a big part of multiplying that is, I would say, inspiring other people with that same vision as well. And when you're doing that as a leader, you're further multiplying that what God's given you, right? And
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. Like going back to even the book of Genesis, right? Adam and Eve, right? He called us to have dominion over the earth, right? And I think as a leader, Adam was supposed to inspire that through Eve, right?
Mm-hmm.
To have more dominion over the resource that God has given them, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, I think that's really what. I don't know what question without answering again, but yeah, I think that's what comes to mind with me because honestly, like I'll speak for myself. It's one of the reasons why I've been getting a lot more into like investing, obviously tithing, investing, right?
Mm-hmm.
All the talent. I think sometimes we look at like all the gifts that like, other people have, but how can I take my gift or what I'm passionate about and
Yeah.
steward that and multiply that, right?
Yeah.
And I think ultimately leadership starts off within us, right? It's how can we lead ourselves, right? Before
Mm-hmm.
we start talking about leading other people, first we got to lead ourselves, right?
Yep.
If we can't lead ourselves, how can you be expected to lead a team, to lead a family, to lead a congregation, right? And I
Yeah.
look at even in the church, for example, I think a big part of what I believe the role of a pastor, right, is to lead the church, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is provide that vision for the church, which is to pursue God or to bring or spread the gospel,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. And like I was actually just about to talk about that next, where to be able to lead anything, to be a great leader
Yeah.
in anything, we first we first need to know how to lead ourselves.
Yes.
Like it starts with ourselves, before that even goes anywhere, we need to work on ourselves. Does that mean being perfect? No. But with the guidance of Jesus Christ, as you work on leading yourself, that will also bleed into other areas.
Yeah.
And like some examples of leading yourself is like, do you have self-control?
Yeah.
And that could apply to so many things. It could be anger, it could be finances, it could be lust, it could be so many different things. Are you humble? Do you have humility in your heart? Are you open to, yeah, are you humble? Are you pride and haughty where you can't receive feedback or receive, what people say?
Right.
Now, when I say receive feedback or receive what people say, it doesn't mean that everything you hear, you got to apply. It takes wisdom and it takes having the right core values, aka, in my opinion, the Bible. But humility, self-control, and of course, there's other things, in terms of leading yourself. And are you loving yourself? Do you show love to yourself? I'm gonna be honest. for a very long time, I struggled to learn how to love myself.
Mm.
But that's a whole different story for another
Right.
day. But yeah, you spoke about the talents gifts and the talents best, and I think that's a great example.
Yeah.
To each one, God has given us talents. To some one, to some two, to some four, to some eight. And what we tend to do as people is that we tend to look at other people's talents. But the real question is, I won't say the real question, but like, and I hope this encourages somebody. But let's say you're given one talent, right?
Yeah.
And your neighbor has 8 talents.
Yeah.
If you steward your one talent very well, and if they're not stewarding their 8 talents very
Right.
well, you could do so much more. Not as a comparative thing, not to say like you're greater than or anything like that, but
Right.
you could do so much through that one talent. And for lack of better words, quote unquote, compared to someone who has 8 talents and they're not stewarding that well.
Right.
So yeah, that's I like how you brought up the talents parable. And in case y'all are not familiar with the talents parable, it's in the book of the Gospels, like in Matthew, Luke, Mark, and John. But I do believe for sure it's in Matthew. So take a look if you haven't, or revisit it. Just revisit it. So yeah, I guess a question for you, Bess, is like, what's an example of leading or being a leader within a family sense?
Good question. I think I'll speak specifically from like a biblical lens, right? I think where the Bible says leadership is about servanthood.
Yeah.
Right. And how can as a leader? I think there's a lot of aspects of leadership in a family. Like yes, having vision, right? But I think another part of it, I know you mentioned in Jeremiah, the start of the episode today, is just how can you serve your family? How can you serve your wife? How can you serve your kids, right? And I think the best example of leadership is Christ in the church, right? Christ in the church, right? How does Christ lead the church? How did he lead the church? Right?
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, right, it's like Christ served the church, but he also provided direction. He also provided boundaries. He also set boundaries, right? He also provided that direction for the church.
Yeah.
In the same way Christ did that for the church, that's how we should be doing that with our family. Right? And doing it not from a place of dictatorship or belittling, but from a place of love.
Yeah.
And care and honor and respect,
Yeah.
Yeah, and look, it's always easy. It's easier said than done at times, right? Like I'll be honest, like it's something I'm still trying to work on by the grace of God, for my future family. But it's something that I believe is a big part of it. I think ultimately it starts off with as men, like going back to being led. In order for you to be a good leader, you have to know how it is to be led. Right, and I think in the case of the family, men have to go back to knowing how to be led by the Most High, by God, right? Being led by the Holy Spirit, right? Because if you can't submit to the Holy Spirit, right? If you can't submit to God, how can you expect your wife to submit to you?
Yeah.
Right, and I think that's a key thing regarding that topic of leadership and submission. So that's what I believe. What do you think? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree with the points you brought up. Like, just realistically speaking, if we're to follow the example that Christ set, which is, the man is the head of the family and the woman follows the lead. I know there's already probably pitchforks in the comments, but just hear what I'm about to say, right?
Yeah.
Realistically speaking, if the man is submitted to God, why? Like there is essentially no harm in submitting to the man as a woman.
Right.
Of course, I am not a woman, so there's only so much I can say. But I say all that to say that, like, if the man is keeping his eyes on Jesus, so in this example where the man is the head of the family and the woman follows his lead, if the man's eyes is on Jesus Christ and is following the example that God set, they will be taken well care of. And also, just because you're leading them does not mean that, like you be saying, best, you're dictating them. You're serving your wife. You know, like a lot of times people say, like, man, women submit or wife submit to your husband, but a lot of times people fail to mention that husbands lay down your life for your wife, sacrifice for your wife. And it's no easy task to sacrifice your life.
Yeah.
It's no easy task to do that. You only got, well, if you're a child of God, you got 2 lives. Hey, somebody praise the Lord. But anyways,
praise the Lord, yes, sir.
but yeah, just to add on to what you're saying, I think, in a family setting, it's like be the example. Like, those who wants to follow will follow. So yeah, I do have a comment regarding that specifically. But do you have any questions, final comments, best, before we? I don't obviously I hope not to like rush you, but do you have any questions or final comments for this topic?
Of course. No, I think we covered a lot today, which is good. And I think I going back to just what you mentioned, I think the burden of responsibility. I think a lot of times when we speak about, and I know this is a very polarizing topic of submission and whatnot, right? And I know some people we might get some criticism in the comment section, but but I think one thing I will say is, like, yes, like obviously the submission side of things, right? But I think we also have to look at the leadership side of things, right? And I would argue that the burden ultimately falls on the leadership, because as you said, right, a part of leadership is love. Right, a part of leadership is love, is sacrifice, to be willing to lay down your life. And going back to the example of Christ in the church, Christ laid down his life for us. He laid down his life for us on the cross, right? And as going back to just as men and our families, right? If you're not ready to lay down your life for your wife, for your kids, for your family, right? Then how much of a leader are you really? Right? And I would argue that is the burden of leadership. The burden and responsibility of leadership is that if it means you have to lay down your life for your family, right, then that is what has to be done at times. Now, and one thing I want to ask now I know we speak about with the relationship and family. One thing I want to ask now: how do we think that can be applied in other contexts as well? So particularly in the work, in the business, and team. Do you think that aspect of sacrificial leadership can be applied to other areas as well? And if so, how?
Really good question. At first, I didn't know how I was in response to this, but I think again, and like I'm a student of the Bible. I'm a student. I learn every day. I'm a student of life. I learn every day. But I think to answer your question best, you could definitely practice sacrificial love, but I do think it looks differently in each case, or it can look differently in each case. So, for example, in a workspace, you could sacrifice your ego, for example. So, like, let's say there's a joint project, and you have this idea that just could really work. Like this, you believe that it could really work, and you express that. Maybe it's received well, maybe it isn't, but they have a certain goal or mission. In my opinion, an example of sacrificial love is like, you know what? I'm willing to let go of my ego. I do believe in this thing, but I'm willing to let go of my ego for the sake of this mission, for the sake of this project. And that also applies to teams as well, where even like just taking this, or even just taking a step back and like, let's say you are a leader of a team, and there's some members in your team that have great feedback or just great ideas. You can sacrifice your pride and ego then, saying, you know what, like, I do understand that I have this quote unquote position of leader on this team, but I'm willing to take a step back to hear what you're saying, and also to maybe even apply what they're saying, because what they're saying could be more productive or quote unquote better than what you initially had in mind. There's also another example that you put up. I'm gonna be honest, I forgot what you said for the third one, but I do think you can practice sacrificial love. Yes, I did speak a lot about ego and pride. But don't. I mean, there are other ways for sure. Like, it says, in the Word of God, to be willing to lay down your life for one another. So I think an example of sacrificial love is, and you hear stories like this where, like, I just recently read the story where there were, I think there was some like students or something like that, I forget, like some girls that drove into a lake, and then this guy, he jumped, like he didn't know them, he just jumped straight into the lake, saved all of them, pulled them all from the car, pulled them all out of the water. So like that is sacrificial
Oh
love in my
wow.
opinion, because he doesn't even know them, but he put his life on the line to
Right.
save them. So yeah, that's what I would say. What about you?
No, yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think those are situations like that where it's like in a situation like that, for example, where it's like, and I think one thing that comes to mind. I'll give you one example, right?
Hmm.
This is like, and we'll give yeah, but I'm gonna use a real life example here. What happened? Was it Charlotte? I think yes, Charlotte, where the young Ukrainian girl who was unfortunately
Oh.
stabbed. Yeah, yeah. Um, I won't lie. I was hot, man. I was angry. I was sad. I was very angry. I was very
Yeah.
angry because the fact that that happened, right? That unfortunate incident happened, right? But there were men in there that didn't do anything, right? In my opinion, people, and I know this might be a controversial take, but in my
Hmm.
opinion, in a situation like that, it's on the men should have been the first one to step up and stop that guy and held that guy, right?
Mm.
And I think that is also a big part of sacrificial leadership in the sense that when you see something like that, right, or even anywhere, right, I
Yeah.
think that's a part of like the responsibility as men, particularly, not only just with leadership, but just with protect, right, provide and protect, right,
Hmm.
protect, right, protect women, protect those around us, right. When you
Yeah.
see somebody who's causing harm to another party, right, particularly in this case, another young woman, right, that's
Hmm.
on us, you, all of you, to go there and protect, right? That's what I believe, right? That's a
Yeah.
great example where it's like in a situation like that, they all should have went there and held that guy down, right?
Mm.
And use physical force if need be, physical violence if necessary, right?
Hmm.
And I know we spoken about this a lot. I know we quoted Jordan Peterson where it's like, well, I can't remember what he even said, but basically it's like what did he even say again? I think it's like um, the date. You think it's I can't. What did he even say? Oh my gosh, I'm blanking out here. I think he said something.
It's
It's not
not
the
the
guard.
Garden Warrior one, right?
It's similar to that one. I think it's similar, but there's another one he said where it's
Mm.
like you have to. Um, a good man is a dangerous man.
Mm.
A good man is a dangerous man, right? Because he has that capacity to be dangerous, but he chooses not to. He only uses it when necessary. But a weak man is a man who can't be strong, who can't be dangerous, right?
Yeah.
Because those people are they cause harm to society, right? So in a
Hmm.
situation like that, right, is an example of sacrificial love in a
Yeah.
situation like that, right? And that's courage, because even in the face of fear, you confront danger.
Yep.
I look at
Yeah.
King David, for example, right? Goliath, right? That was courage, right?
Hmm.
Right? He walked boldly, right? I want not just courage, faith,
Yeah.
right? Because dude, physically, right? You would think he doesn't have a chance, right? But by faith, he knew the God that he served, right? And by
Amen.
faith, he went and confronted that obstacle, which being Goliath,
Yeah.
right? So I think that's an example in which that sacrificial love should be applied,
Hmm.
right? So to me, that's one thing that comes to mind for me. And regarding the work and other parts, honestly, I'm still that one. I don't necessarily have a clear like idea of, right? That's why I
Yeah.
wanted to get your take on that
Hmm.
because I find that very interesting. I find it very interesting to see how that applies in those situations as well.
Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah.
yeah. No, it's definitely case by case. Sorry, what's
No,
that?
I was gonna say, and, anyone else who's watching or listening, if you have any examples, please just drop your answers or examples in the comments below. We'd love to hear. We'd
Yeah,
love to hear your take.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. No, please do. Please do drop your examples in the comments because you never know. Like that might inspire somebody.
yeah.
It might inspire one of us as well. So like
Exactly.
we're all students, we're all learning. So do drop them in the comments below.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, no, what I'm hearing best is a good man got that dog in
You
him,
already
huh?
know, man. You already know, man. You already know, man. You already know.
But all jokes aside,
Yeah.
no, you make great points like
Mm.
courage and boldness, and I like how you added faith to that.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I like how you added faith to
Mm.
that. Like especially for people who believe in Jesus
Yeah.
Christ, like we serve a mighty God, man. And of course, I understand that fear, plays a huge factor in everyone's life,
Yeah.
but the more we draw close to Christ and the more we understand God, the less fear we will have because we serve a mighty God. There's nothing He cannot do.
Yeah.
Um, and I also want to just like I like the example they brought about the Ukrainian girl. It does remind me of I don't know where this took place, but I don't know where this took place. But it was at the airport. There was this guy that held this woman hostage, and he had a knife in his hand. And there's this dude that's like this man, like this adult, like this. He was a dad, I'm pretty sure. He was like, hey, you know what's like? I'll be the hostage instead. Like, just let her go. So like he went to the armed man and like gave himself as a hostage, and then the woman was let go. And then like 10, 15 seconds later, as the guy's like threatening for whatever he's threatening, the man quickly turned around and knocked the knife out of his hand and tackled him to the ground. So like that, like you brought up the example earlier, and I think this also is a good example of sacrificial love, where it's like I see someone in danger, I'm gonna put myself in this situation not because I like it, but because someone else is in danger, and I want to do something about that. And fortunately, he was quick enough and skilled enough to be able to take down the person without anyone being harmed. Actually, I think he grabbed the blade with his hand, so I think there's like a cut on his hand, but other than that, there was no like large harm there. So yeah, that's we spoke a lot about what does it mean to lead and to be a leader. Do you have any final comments or questions for the viewers, best?
No, I think it was a good conversation. I think it was a good conversation. We touched up on a lot of points.
Hmm.
And again, to all the viewers, got any comments, questions, anything? Feel free to drop it down below.
Yeah.
Drop it your comments down below. Yeah. How about you, Jeremiah? Got anything?
Yeah, yeah. Just kind of referring to my notes here, I do just like my final thing. I do strongly believe that a great leader or someone who aspires to be a leader also does a lot of reflection as well. So we spoke about humility. We spoke about like understanding your beliefs, your values, as long as they're reasonable, and of course that's subjective. But the strongest values and the purest values and the holiest values is that of Jesus Christ, and the willingness to grow. So like as you reflect, you consider what's being taken in and what's going out. You reflect on all of that, and just the willingness to grow. And then also, I think being a great leader, it's for the betterment of people and yourself. So being a great leader is not only you growing or you developing, it's not only other people developing, is where everybody can be lifted and encouraged and grow as well. Um, some other things I want to add is like if you are aspiring to be a leader, and of course I'm not speaking as if I'm some kind of professional leader or anything. I'm still learning. But if you do aspire to be a leader, I would suggest, and let me know your thoughts as well. But like I would suggest incremental changes. Not respecting in return because the investment is you. So as you like pour into others or serve others, and it's also encouraging the word of God, like not to expect things in return because the investment is you. You grow in intangible ways that people won't see, but that's fine because you grow from it. And of course, like I said, the betterment of people and yourself. And then finally, I don't believe you can force leadership, but you can aspire to lead and set the example. And I do think it's important to be semi-malleable. And what I mean by that is having your beliefs, yes, having your core values, being willing to take in feedback, but not compromising the things that are most important to you. And so you cannot show love to others and not to yourself, and vice versa. So yeah, that's just kind of my final note there.
Nice. Yeah, I agree. I like the self reflection component, because I think about leadership is just having self reflection and know what are things you're being good at, what are things you can work on. I think that's a big part of not just leadership, but I think overall self development.
Yeah.
Overall self development, self growth, and from there you can even grow to be a better leader over time.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is it for our topic for today. So before we sign off, we just want to express our gratitude again for every viewer that has come to our channel. If you have not yet subscribed, we would greatly appreciate if you do. Um, whether you if you like the content, please do like the content. If there are things that you just don't agree with, which is fine, drop your comments down below. We do look at the comments. We're more than happy to engage in conversation. But please do subscribe or follow if you're on Spotify. Like the video, comment down below. We do see these interactions. And yeah, this is Kings in the Courts. I hope you've been blessed today.
Yes,
And
sir.
I am Jeremiah.
I'm best.
And we will catch you all later.
Take care, guys. Peace.